Have you ever wondered what a typical day in the life of a Viking looked like? Did these legendary warriors only live for battle and conquest? In this video, we will explore their daily life, from dawn until dusk. Let's dive into the activities of the Vikings, not just their fighting, but also their work, family life, and sacred rituals. We will take a deep dive into a day in the life of a Viking, what they did, how they lived, and how their daily activities were connected to the cultural and societal values they held dear. 1. Early morning. Waking up and starting the day with rituals. As the first rays of light pierce the cold, crisp Viking dawn, the Vikings rise early, readying themselves for a long and demanding day. The moment they wake, the air is filled with a sense of purpose. They may not have an alarm clock like we do today, but the sound of nature, whether it's the distant call of a raven or the soft howling of the wind, serves as their cue to begin their day. Before getting to work, the Viking would begin with a ritual. For them, the day started with a sacred moment to honor the gods. They would gather in their humble homes, facing the rising sun or standing outside in the fresh morning air, and offer prayers to their pantheon of gods. Odin, the wise Allfather, Thor, the thunder god, and Freya, the goddess of love and war, were at the forefront of these invocations. These rituals were not just about asking for protection and good fortune. They were about gratitude and maintaining the balance between the gods and humankind. Offering a small gift, perhaps some food, a piece of silver, or sacred herbs, was a way to give thanks for the gods' favor and ensure that the gods would look after them in the harsh world they inhabited. Some Vikings might also perform a simple but powerful act, lighting a candle or incense, offering a humble prayer that the gods would guide their hands through their tasks, whether that was work in the fields, fighting in battle, or protecting their families. It was a sacred tradition that set the tone for their day and reminded them that their existence was intricately connected to divine forces. Morning activities. After the rituals, the Vikings were no strangers to hard work. While their gods were invoked, it was time for the warrior and provider to get busy. If a Viking man was a warrior, the first thing he would do after waking was to inspect his weapons, his axe, sword, or shield, making sure they were in prime condition. The tools that ensured his survival, in both battle and life, were as important as any spiritual ritual. For many Vikings, horses were also an integral part of their daily lives. If they had a horse, they would tend to it next, ensuring that it was ready for travel or battle. Preparing the horse was as much about showing respect to the animal as it was about preparing for the day's journey or war. Meanwhile, Viking women were the unsung heroes of daily life. They didn't just manage the household, they were the backbones of their families. As dawn broke, Viking women could be found in the kitchen preparing a simple but hearty breakfast of bread, cheese, dried meats, and perhaps some berries or oats. The meal might be simple, but it was enough to fuel them for the demanding day ahead. While the men prepared for war or work, the women would also spend time tending to the livestock, such as cows, goats, and sheep. They would milk the animals, check on their health, and ensure the farm was running smoothly. Gathering eggs, fetching water, or picking vegetables from their gardens were tasks that required attention. Life in the Viking world wasn't just about battles and glory. It was a cycle of sustaining life, day after day, from dawn till dusk. For those lucky enough to live near the sea, fishing would be another essential morning task. Viking men would grab their fishing lines or nets to gather food for the day, a vital source of protein. This wasn't just a form of sustenance, it was also an essential part of trade. Many Viking communities relied on fish as one of their most valuable commodities in the marketplace. The Viking world was not just about conquest and war. It was about a deep connection to the land, the sea, and the livelihoods they forged from it. It was about understanding the balance of the universe and knowing that while battle was inevitable, life had to be maintained every single day. Whether it was repairing a fence or sharpening a blade, every action in a Viking's daily life had meaning. Even the mundane tasks were connected to their sense of honor and duty. Crafting and repairing the home. As the day progressed, Vikings didn't just think about their immediate needs. They were also skilled craftsmen and builders. The home they lived in had to be constantly maintained. Longhouses, the hallmark of Viking architecture, were often made of wood and stone, requiring repair after storms or the passage of time. Building and maintaining a Viking home was a way of showing care for family and respect for the gods. After all, a sturdy home was a sign of prosperity and stability. In a way, it was as though each repair, every crafted tool, every woven cloak was an offering of sorts. It was an act that said, "We are here to stay. We are here to thrive." And that thriving wasn't just for the individual, it was for the community. The men and women who worked side by side were not only ensuring their own survival, they were strengthening the very fabric of their Viking society. 2. Daytime. Daily work and community rituals. Agriculture and fishing. The Vikings were not just warriors, they were also skilled farmers and fishermen, and their day revolved around essential tasks for survival. As the day began, men, women, and children would scatter across the landscape, tending to the fields and livestock, ensuring the continued success of their families and communities. Farming. The Vikings were expert farmers who grew barley, wheat, and a variety of other crops. They had an intimate connection with the land and understood the cycles of nature. These crops were vital for their food supply and for brewing their own beer, a staple drink in Viking society. Livestock. Vikings raised cattle, sheep, and goats. These animals weren't just sources of food. They provided wool for clothing and leather for armor and tools. Milk and cheese were part of the Viking diet, and sheep were especially valuable for their wool, which was spun into yarn to make clothing and blankets. Fishing and trade. In coastal Viking communities, fishing was vital. They used their longships not just for warfare, but also to navigate the seas to fish and trade. Fishing was a major source of protein, and the surplus fish could be preserved by salting, drying, or smoking to last through the long winters. Vikings also traded their fish and other goods with neighboring settlements. Markets were held, where goods would be exchanged, not just food, but also tools, weapons, and clothing. Vikings had an extraordinary ability to adapt to both land and sea, using every part of their environment for sustenance and trade. The longships they designed weren't only used for raids, but also for commerce, allowing them to travel along rivers and coastlines, meeting traders or visiting neighboring villages. Craftsmen and builders. While Vikings were known for their warrior culture, they also had skilled craftsmen who played a crucial role in the community. These craftsmen were not only focused on creating weapons, but also on making tools and household goods that were essential for everyday life. Weapons and jewelry. Crafting was an essential part of Viking society. The blacksmiths were skilled in forging swords, axes, and spears, tools that were not just for battle but also for trade. Vikings made beautiful jewelry, such as rings, bracelets, and brooches, often incorporating Norse symbols and runic inscriptions. These pieces were worn proudly, showing wealth and social status. Shipbuilding. Shipbuilding was perhaps the most important craft for the Vikings. Their longships were a marvel of engineering, made from oak, pine, and other resilient woods. These ships were designed to be fast, light, and flexible, allowing for swift raids, trading, and exploration. Shipyards would be busy places where Viking men would carve and assemble these ships, often spending months to complete them. Housing construction. The longhouse, a central feature of Viking homes, was another significant craft. These homes were often constructed with wood, stone, and thatched roofs to provide warmth and shelter against the harsh northern climates. The interiors were simple, but the walls were often carved with runes or decorative symbols to honor gods and ancestors. Viking homes weren't just places to live, they were sacred spaces, reflecting the importance of family, faith, and unity. Rituals and festivals. Viking society was deeply rooted in religion and rituals. Their connection to the gods was integral to their daily lives, and these rituals were performed not just in the morning, but throughout the day, marking important events, changes in seasons, or personal milestones. Harvest festivals. After a successful harvest or a fishing trip, the Vikings would hold a feast to honor the gods and celebrate their bounty. These rituals were crucial for thanking the gods, such as Freyr, the god of fertility and prosperity, and ensuring that they would continue to bless the land and the people. These festivals would often involve offerings of food, drink, and sometimes sacrifices of animals to honor the gods. Drums, horns, and flutes would play as people danced, feasted, and shared stories of past battles and successes. Community gatherings and councils. Vikings also held meetings to discuss important matters, such as disputes, marriage arrangements, or even preparing for the next raid or expansion. These councils, often held in the thing or longhouses, were where the elders, chieftains, and even regular members of the community came together to deliberate. During these sessions, individuals would voice their concerns, seek justice, and plan for the future. Celebration of the gods. As evening approached, the Vikings would hold small rituals to honor their gods. These included sacrificial offerings and prayers for protection in battle or for a bountiful harvest. Blots, large sacrificial feasts held in honor of the gods, were among the most significant events in Viking life. These gatherings weren't just about appeasing the gods. They were about strengthening the bonds of the community and ensuring that the people continued to thrive under the gods' protection. The daily life of the Vikings was a delicate balance of hard work, spirituality, and community involvement. Their lives were shaped not just by warfare and exploration, but by farming, craftsmanship, and rituals that defined their way of life. Let's dive deeper into the rhythms of Viking life and appreciate how these everyday activities contributed to their honor, strength, and survival. 3. Evening. Family and rest. Family activities. As the day draws to a close and the sun begins to dip behind the rugged Viking landscape, the rhythm of daily life shifts to the warmth and comfort of family. The long hours of hard work are over, and now it's time to gather together. The evening meal becomes more than just sustenance. It is a cherished time for family bonding. The table, though simple, is full of warmth and laughter. The Vikings would typically share roasted meats, fish, and freshly baked bread, all prepared with care. Cheese, a staple of their diet, would be placed alongside other basic, yet nourishing foods. Meals were never rushed. They were shared slowly, with each bite savored and enjoyed. This time was more than just about eating. It was about being together. Around the table, every family member would share their stories, adventures, triumphs, and even failures. Fathers and mothers would recount the events of the day, whether it was a success in the fields, a catch of fish, or a successful trade in the nearby market. Children, eager to learn, would listen attentively, absorbing not only the stories, but also the values and wisdom passed down from generation to generation. These moments were invaluable for building a strong, unified family that supported each other. The family meal wasn't just a physical gathering. It was a symbol of Viking life, a community of people united by their shared struggles, joys, and experiences. For Vikings, family wasn't just a bond. It was the heart of everything they did. Family care. After a long and tiring day, it was often the women of the Viking household who managed most of the home's needs. Viking women were multitaskers, ensuring the household ran smoothly and the family was taken care of. Cooking and feeding the family. As the evening approached, the women would prepare hearty meals for their families. The kitchen was a hub of activity, as bread was baked, meats were roasted, and vegetables were chopped. It was here, in this space, that family members came together to nourish both their bodies and their bonds. Caring for children. Women also played the primary role in raising children. They would teach them essential skills such as cooking, weaving, animal care, and the values that were passed down through generations. They were not only caretakers, but also the teachers of Viking children, ensuring the next generation would be ready to take on the world as their parents had done. Caring for livestock. While the men might be resting or repairing weapons, the women would often be tending to the livestock. Caring for the cows, sheep, and goats was vital, and it required attention at all times of the day. The women of the household made sure the animals were properly fed and that milk and wool were collected for daily use. Warriors resting. The warriors of the Viking family, after spending hours working or training, would finally have a chance to rest. They would gather around the hearth, the firelight casting flickering shadows across their faces as they relaxed and shared their experiences of the day. Sharing stories of battle. These moments of rest weren't just for physical relaxation. They were an opportunity for Vikings to share the tales of their journeys. Warriors would talk about their victories, recounting bravery in battle and strategies that led to success. But they would also share the stories of their failures, mistakes made in the heat of battle, lessons learned, and how to improve for the future. Lessons of honor and war. These shared moments were essential for reinforcing the warrior culture of the Vikings. Every story served to pass on knowledge and wisdom to the younger generation. They weren't just about glory. They were about learning from the past and making sure that honor and justice always guided their actions. The bond formed around the hearth was one of shared values and mutual respect. In the end, the Viking evening was a time for reflection, bonding, and sharing. A perfect balance to the intense work and battles that defined their day. The bonds formed around the hearth were not just personal, but societal, ensuring that the values of honor, strength, and unity would remain ingrained in the Viking people for generations to come. 4. Night. Rituals and sleep rituals before sleep. As the sun sets and darkness envelops the Viking world, the day's hard work is finally over. But the Vikings don't simply retire to their beds. The nighttime rituals were a final act of connection to their gods, their ancestors, and the natural world around them. Before they go to bed, some Vikings would perform small rituals to seek protection and a peaceful sleep. The day had been full of hard work, challenges, and sometimes battles, and now was the time to ask the gods for rest and safety through the night. These rituals could be as simple as whispering prayers to Odin, the god of wisdom and war, or Thor, the god of thunder, asking for protection from evil spirits or bad dreams. Offering prayers for safe sleep. These prayers often involved a simple offering, such as a piece of bread, a small drink, or even a token for the gods. The Vikings believed that by performing these rites, they ensured peaceful rest and protection during the night. As part of their ritual, some might light a small fire or lamp in the corner of their home or longhouse, offering warmth, light, and a sense of comfort. These fires were symbolic, keeping the spirits of the ancestors close by, making sure they watched over the living during the night. Campfires and storytelling. After the prayers and rituals, the Viking community would gather around the campfire or hearth, where the warmth from the flames made it a cozy place to reflect on the day. Campfires were not just a source of light and warmth. They were places of gathering, storytelling, and bonding. Sharing stories. As the fire flickered and crackled, Vikings would recount the day's challenges, successes, and failures, the tales of battle they fought, the dangerous journeys they took, or the tricks they pulled in trade or exploration. The elderly warriors, the fathers, and the mothers would share their wisdom with the younger generation, teaching them not only about battle tactics, but about life, honor, and values that had been passed down for generations. Reflection and bonding. For the Viking community, the fire wasn't just for warmth, it was a space for connection. As they sat around the hearth, they could share experiences, reflect on their personal journeys, and learn from one another. The stories weren't just meant to entertain, they served as teaching tools to pass on essential life lessons. The importance of family, loyalty, bravery, and honor were all embedded in these tales, reinforcing the foundation of Viking culture. Sleep and rest. When the night grew darker, the Vikings would finally retreat to their beds, ready for a well-deserved rest after the long day. But while their beds were simple and modest, their sleep was no less significant. Sleeping arrangements. Vikings typically slept on narrow beds, which were made from wood or simple materials like straw, hay, or grass. These beds were often shared with others in the household or longhouse, as space was limited in the villages. Though simple, these beds were not uncomfortable. They were designed for practicality, and their primary purpose was to provide rest from the intense labor and challenges of the day. Keeping warm. In the cold, harsh winter months, sharing a bed or sleeping close together helped keep the Viking families warm. The warmth of another person and the shared heat from the fire in the hearth provided the necessary comfort during the freezing temperatures of the Scandinavian night. Even in the midst of the Viking winter, the nights weren't always silent. As they settled down to sleep, there was often the quiet hum of the hearth fire, the sound of wind howling outside, and occasionally the crunch of snow underfoot, adding to the atmosphere of solitude and reflection. Viking families would lie close together, wrapped in their furs and blankets, knowing that their community, their honor, and the protection of the gods would keep them safe. As the night enveloped the Viking world, the day's physical labor was replaced by rituals, stories, and quiet rest. The family bond grew stronger as they shared experiences around the fire and slept side by side. These moments of peace and reflection were crucial to Viking life, showing that in their tough and often violent world, there was a deep need for rest, honor, and spiritual connection. Viking life was not only about battles, but also about finding balance between work, family, and culture. From tending to livestock to engaging in sacred rituals, every action they took had a deeper purpose, centered around respect, peace, and honoring the gods. If you want to explore more fascinating stories about Viking life, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to never miss any videos. Thank you for watching.